Hello everyone, welcome to the series on the history of English literature. And in this video, we are going to discuss the development of poetic style in the Victorian age. Introduction. The Victorian age, 1837 to 1901, named after Queen Victoria's reign, was a period of remarkable literary flourishing and stylistic innovation in England. This era witnessed significant transformations in poetic style, characterized by a shift towards more ornate and elaborate forms as a natural reaction against the simpler methods of the preceding Romantic period. Prominent poets such as Alfred Lord Tennyson, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, Robert Browning, and Matthew Arnold each contributed uniquely to the evolving landscape of Victorian poetry. Their collective efforts not only enriched the poetic tradition but also reflected the broader cultural and intellectual currents of the time. Tennyson, the ornate architect of Victorian poetry. Alfred Lord Tennyson stands as a central figure in Victorian poetry, renowned for his development of an ornate poetic style that incorporated sophisticated artistic schemes. Tennyson's mastery of vowel music, alliteration, and other poetic devices created a harmonious and melodious quality in his verse. His use of vowel music involved the strategic placement of vowels to enhance the musicality and rhythm of his lines, resulting in a lyrical and flowing sound that captivated readers. Additionally, Tennyson's employment of alliteration, a repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words, added a layer of aesthetic pleasure and emphasis to his poetry. Tennyson's poetic craftsmanship was unprecedented in its complexity and refinement. His ability to weave intricate patterns of sound and rhythm demonstrated a high level of technical skill, making his work stand out in the Victorian literary scene. Poems such as The Charge of the Light Brigade and In Memoriam A.H.H. exemplify his ornate style, where the interplay of sound and meaning creates a rich and immersive reading experience. Tennyson's dedication to artistic excellence set a benchmark for Victorian poets, including subsequent generations, to explore the potential of formal poetic devices. The Pre-Raphaelites, enhancing ornateness with archaic elegance. The Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, founded in the mid-19th century, took the ornate poetic style pioneered by Tennyson to new heights. Comprising artists and poets like D.G. Rossetti, William Morris, and A.C. Swinburne, the Pre-Raphaelites sought to infuse their work with a deeper sense of detail and color. Unlike Tennyson, whose diction was polished and musical, the Pre-Raphaelites opted for a simpler diction that drew heavily from archaic vocabulary. This choice lent their poetry an antiquarian charm, evoking the medieval and romantic traditions that inspired their artistic vision. Moreover, the Pre-Raphaelites' poetry was distinguished by its highly colored mass of detail. Their vivid descriptions and meticulous attention to imagery created a lush and immersive atmosphere in their verses. This emphasis on visual richness and sensory experience aligned with their broader artistic goals of returning to the detailed and vibrant aesthetics preceding the Renaissance. Poems such as Rossetti's Goblin Market and Morris's The Earthly Paradise showcase this enhanced ornateness, where every line is imbued with a tapestry of colors and textures that elevate the sensory impact of their work. Robert Browning, a protest against ornateness. In contrast to the elaborate styles of Tennyson and the Pre-Raphaelites, Robert Browning offered a distinctively different approach to Victorian poetic style. Browning's work can be seen as a protest against the aureate diction, prevalent in his contemporaries' poetry. Instead of embracing ornate language, Browning favored simplicity and a heady speed, particularly in his earlier lyrics. His approach allowed his poetry to move with a vigorous and dynamic pace, engaging readers with its directness and emotional intensity. Browning's shift towards simplicity did not signify a rejection of poetic complexity. Rather, it was an effort to achieve greater clarity and immediacy in his expression. His dramatic monologues, such as My Last Duchess and Porphyria's Lover, exemplify his balance between simplicity and depth. These works focus on character-driven narratives where the psychological and emotional landscapes of the speakers take precedence over elaborate stylistic flourishes. In his more mature works, Browning's style became more obscure, a result of his eager imagination and reckless impetuosity. This obscurity was not a retreat from complexity, but an exploration of the depths of human consciousness and the intricacies of individual experience. Matthew Arnold, Classical Simplicity and Studied Restraint. Matthew Arnold, another influential Victorian poet, approached poetic style with a different set of priorities. Unlike Tennyson and the Pre-Raphaelites, Arnold maintained a classical simplicity in his poetry, deliberately avoiding overdeveloped picturesqueness. His works are characterized by a studied simplicity that emphasizes clarity, restraint, and intellectual rigor. Arnold believed that poetry should aspire to higher level of aesthetic and moral purpose, drawing inspiration from classical traditions of balance and harmony. Arnold's poetry often reflects his broader philosophical concerns, including the role of culture in society and pursuit of truth and beauty. Poems like Dover Beach and The Scholar Gypsy illustrate his preference for a measured and thoughtful poetic voice, where the emphasis is on conveying profound ideas with precision and elegance. His classical approach provided a counterbalance to the ornate styles of his peers, highlighting the diversity of poetic expression within the Victorian literary landscape. The ornate trend, a reaction against simplicity. Overall, the Victorian age witnessed a trend towards ornate poetic styles as a natural reaction against the simpler methods of the preceding Romantic period. This movement was characterized by an increased use of formal poetic devices, rich and archaic vocabulary, and a heightened attention to detail and color in poetic imagery. The ornate style served to elevate the aesthetic quality of poetry, making it more complex and layered in its expression. This shift was not uniform across all Victorian poets, as evidenced by the contrasting approaches of Browning and Arnold. However, the general inclination towards ornateness reflected the broader cultural and intellectual currents of the Victorian era, which valued artistic refinement, intellectual depth, and moral seriousness. The ornate poetic style became a hallmark of Victorian literature, distinguishing it from the more straightforward and emotionally driven poetry of earlier times. Conclusion. The development of poetic style in the Victorian age was marked by a dynamic interplay between ornate complexity and restrained simplicity. Poets like Tennyson and the Pre-Raphaelites championed elaborate and richly detailed poetic forms, while Browning and Arnold offered alternative approaches that emphasized psychological depth and classical restraint. This diversity of styles not only enriched the Victorian poetic tradition but also mirrored the era's broader cultural and intellectual transformations. The Victorian trend towards ornateness in poetry underscored a collective aspiration for artistic excellence and intellectual sophistication. By expanding the boundaries of poetic form and exploring new aesthetic possibilities, Victorian poets laid the groundwork for future generations to continue the evolution of poetic expression. Their legacy endures in the enduring richness and complexity of English poetry, a testament to the vibrant and multifaceted nature of Victorian literary achievement. So this was the discussion on the development of poetic style in the Victorian age. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other topic. Until then, goodbye and thank you.